I've spent 17 years identifying the dead. 17 years staring at charred remains, decomposed flesh, bones bleached by time and trauma. I've learned to read death like a language. Every fracture tells a story. Every dental record whispers a name. Every fingerprint ridge carries an identity back from the void. My job is to give closure, to transform the unrecognizable into the recognized, to let families bury their dead and move forward. I'm good at what I do. No, I'm exceptional at what I do. My error rate is 0.03% across 842 cases. I don't make mistakes with the dead. Until Elias Harrow. Or maybe I didn't make a mistake at all. Maybe that's what terrifies me most. It started on a frozen morning in March when my phone rang at 4:13 a.m. International number. Swiss area code. A clipped professional voice informed me that a private helicopter had gone down in the Valais Alps, approximately 40 kilometers from Zermatt. Single passenger. The aircraft had struck a mountain face during unexpected turbulence, exploded on impact, and tumbled 3,000 feet down a glacier crevasse. Recovery teams had extracted remains. Severe thermal damage. Identification required urgently due to the passenger's profile. Who was the passenger? I asked, already pulling on clothes, my mind shifting into clinical mode. A pause, then Elias Harrow. I stopped moving. Everyone knew that name. Elias Harrow, the Diamond King, the man who controlled 40% of the global precious stone market through Harrow Diamond Corporation. A billionaire whose personal net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations. A man whose face appeared on magazine covers, whose handshake could shift commodity prices, whose word could make or break mining operations across 3 continents. I'll be on the next flight, I said. 16 hours later, I stood in a refrigerated morgue facility outside Geneva, staring at what remained of a human being. The body was grotesque, a sculpture of char and melted tissue, bones visible through gaps where fire had consumed flesh, the skull partially intact but blackened. The limbs contracted into the pugilistic pose that extreme heat produces. The smell, even through the ventilation system and my mask, was overwhelming. Burned human tissue has a particular odor, sweet and acrid simultaneously, something that coats your throat and stays there for days. A woman stood beside me. Dr. Margot Klein, chief forensic pathologist for the Swiss Federal Police. 50s steel-gray hair pulled tight. Eyes that had seen too much death to be shocked by any of it. The helicopter's black box confirms he was alone, she said, her English carrying a German accent. Pilot died on impact. Harrow was in the passenger compartment. The explosion was immediate. Fuel ignition. The body tumbled with the wreckage. You can see the trauma patterns consistent with both blast force and gravitational impact. I circled the examination table slowly, documenting everything with my eyes before I'd touch anything. Forensic identification is about building layers of certainty. You start with the obvious, then drill down into the absolute. Dental records? I asked. Being couriered from his private dentist in London. Should arrive within 3 hours. DNA reference samples. His wife provided a hairbrush and toothbrush from their Zurich residence. Lab is processing now. Personal effects? Klein gestured to a steel tray. A melted watch, high-end, maybe Patek Philippe, reduced to a lump of gold and crystal. Fragments of clothing burned beyond recognition. And a ring, a platinum band with a massive diamond, somehow still intact, though the metal was scorched black. His wedding ring, Klein said, 22-carat diamond. Harrow's personal signature, he always wore it, his wife confirmed. I photographed everything, then turned back to the body. Time to begin the real work. I started with skeletal analysis. Male, approximately 6 feet tall based on long bone measurements. Age estimation from pubic symphysis and sternal rib ends suggested late 40s to mid-50s. Elias Harrow was 51. Check. I examined the skull structure. Caucasian ancestry markers, consistent with Harrow's documented heritage. Check. Old healed fractures in the left radius and ulna. I'd need to compare those with medical records, but they suggested a significant childhood injury. 3 hours passed. The dental records arrived. I positioned the skull under high-intensity light and began the comparison. 12 points of dental concordance, fillings, crown work, a distinctive incisor spacing, a root canal on the upper left second molar. Perfect match. I documented each one, photographed from multiple angles, built my case for certainty. The DNA results came back next morning. E16 locus STR profile. Compared against the reference samples from his personal items. Match probability 99.997%. Essentially absolute. I stood in that morgue for 48 hours total, sleeping in brief intervals in an adjacent office, eating tasteless sandwiches, drinking coffee that tasted like regret. I checked everything twice, 3 times. I brought in a colleague from Paris for independent verification. He confirmed my findings. On the 3rd day, I signed the identification certificate. The body in refrigeration unit 7 was, beyond reasonable doubt, Elias Harrow. Cause of death: multiple traumatic injuries and thermal damage consistent with helicopter crash and subsequent explosion. I sealed the body bag myself, watched it loaded into the private mortuary transport, and flew home to Boston, feeling the particular exhaustion that comes from staring at death until your eyes burn. Elias Harrow was cremated 4 days later in a private ceremony. I watched the news coverage from my apartment. His widow, Cassandra Harrow, dressed in black, her face obscured by a veil, surrounded by security. Their 2 children, both in their 20s, stone-faced and silent. Business partners, politicians, celebrities, a procession of power and wealth saying goodbye to one of their own. The case was closed. Another name returned from the void. Another family given closure. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt something else, something I couldn't name. A whisper of wrongness at the edge of my consciousness. I ignored it. 17 years of experience told me I'd done everything right. Then, 2 weeks and 3 days after I signed that death certificate, my phone rang again. Dr. Reeve? A woman's voice, American accent, controlled but strained. This is Cassandra Harrow. I need to speak with you immediately in person. It's about my husband. 12 hours later, I sat in a penthouse suite overlooking Boston Harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a postcard. Furniture that cost more than my annual salary. Art on the walls that belonged in museums. And Cassandra Harrow sitting across from me, looking like she hadn't slept since the funeral. She was striking. Late 40s, blonde hair with silver threading through it. Expensive but understated clothing. The kind of beauty that money can enhance but not create. Her hands trembled slightly as she slid a leather portfolio across the glass coffee table between us. 4 days ago, she said, her voice tight. Harrow Diamond Corporation announced a new contract, $800 million. A partnership with the Kimberley Consortium in South Africa for exclusive distribution rights to a new diamond field discovery. The contract was negotiated over the past 10 days. It was signed digitally 3 days ago. I waited. She opened the portfolio and pulled out printed documents. It was signed by my husband. The air in the room changed. I felt my chest constrict. Mrs. Harrow, look at it. She thrust the papers toward me. Look at the signature verification. I took the documents. Standard corporate contract, dense legal language, schedules and appendices. I flipped to the signature page. Digital signature block with full cryptographic verification metadata. Signatory: Elias Harrow, Chief Executive Officer, Harrow Diamond Corporation. Timestamp: March 27th, 11:47 p.m. GMT. March 27th, 18 days after the helicopter crash, 15 days after I signed his death certificate. Below the signature, biometric verification data, retinal scan, fingerprint authentication, blockchain certification through a private corporate verification system, third-party audit confirmation from a Swiss digital security firm. This is impossible, I said quietly. Is it? Cassandra's eyes locked onto mine. You identified his body. You're certain it was him? Yes. Dental records, DNA, skeletal analysis, everything matched. Then how do you explain this? Her voice rose slightly, control slipping. The consortium verified the signature. 3 separate security firms confirmed it. The biometric data matches Elias's records perfectly. The retinal scan was performed live during the digital signing ceremony. There's video footage. The blockchain verification is unbreakable. This contract was signed by my husband, after you said he was dead. I stared at the papers, my mind racing through possibilities. Could someone have forged it? Deep fake technology? Stolen biometric data? The consortium's security is absolute. They built their verification system specifically to prevent fraud in billion-dollar deals. The retinal scan was live, not pre-recorded. The fingerprint authentication required physical touch on a biometric pad. The blockchain certification creates an unbreakable chain of custody. According to every technical expert I've consulted, this signature is genuine. Then the body I identified wasn't Elias. She leaned forward, desperation cracking through her controlled facade. Or it was, and something is happening that neither of us understands. Dr. Reeve, I need you to investigate this. I need to know if my husband is alive, or if someone is using his death to steal his company, or if... She trailed off, her composure finally breaking. Or if I'm losing my mind. I should have refused, I should have walked away from the impossible. But 17 years of certainty was crumbling beneath me, and I needed to know the truth as badly as she did. I'll need access to everything, I said. Corporate records, security footage, his personal files, family information, everything. She nodded, pulling out her phone. I'll arrange it, but Dr. Reeve, be careful. If Elias is alive, he's hiding for a reason. And if he's dead, then someone powerful enough to fake an impossible signature is involved. Either way, you're walking into something dangerous. The next 72 hours consumed me. Cassandra provided access to files I shouldn't have been able to see. Corporate financial records, internal communications, security logs, family documents. I built timelines, tracked money movements, interviewed people who wouldn't talk to police but would talk to someone the widow had hired. The picture that emerged was complex and dark. Elias Harrow had built his empire on control. Absolute, ruthless control. He owned the company entirely. No board, no outside investors, no oversight except what he chose to allow. His word was law. His decisions were final. And in the months before his death, he'd become increasingly paranoid. Internal emails showed him arguing with his son, Marcus Harrow, about company direction. Marcus, 27, MIT graduate, blockchain technology expert, wanted to modernize the company's operations, implement cryptocurrency payment systems, decentralize the supply chain. Elias refused, repeatedly, angrily. The final email I found, dated 2 weeks before the crash, was brutal. You understand nothing about this business. You will never run this company. I'd rather burn it to the ground than let you destroy what I've built. Marcus had been cut from the will entirely 3 months before Elias died. Then there was Julian Cross, Elias's business partner and chief operating officer. 45, ambitious, ruthless in his own right. He'd been with Harrow Diamond for 20 years, built half the distribution network, negotiated deals that made billions, but he was still an employee, never an equal. Internal communications showed increasing tension. Julian pushing for equity stake, Elias refusing, Julian making thinly veiled threats about exploring other opportunities. 2 days before the helicopter crash, $840 million moved through a series of offshore accounts connected to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. I traced 6 layers deep before hitting walls I couldn't break through without law enforcement authority. But the pattern was clear. Someone was moving massive amounts of money in preparation for something. The helicopter crash itself raised questions I hadn't considered during the initial identification. The aircraft was Elias's private helicopter, maintained by his personal crew. The pilot, Stefan Kovac, had flown for Elias for 12 years. No history of violations, perfect safety record. The crash investigation blamed unexpected turbulence and pilot error, but the black box data showed something strange. Kovac had deviated from the flight plan by nearly 30 kilometers before the crash. No explanation why, no distress calls, just a sudden course change, then silence, then impact. I interviewed the recovery team leader by phone. Swiss Mountain Rescue, 30 years experience. The wreckage pattern was consistent with explosion and tumbling, he told me. But I'll tell you something strange. We found the pilot's body 300 meters from the main crash site, like he'd been thrown clear. But the passenger compartment was sealed on that model. There's no way someone gets ejected from the passenger section unless the hull breaches in a very specific way. Did you report that? I asked. A pause. I noted it in my preliminary report, but the official investigation was closed quickly. Very quickly. The Harrow family's lawyers were involved from day one. They wanted the body recovered and released immediately. There was pressure to conclude the investigation. I thanked him and hung up, my mind spinning. That evening, I met with Elias Harrow at a coffee shop in Cambridge near MIT. He arrived on a motorcycle, expensive electric model, silent and fast. He was tall like his father, but leaner, with angular features and intelligent eyes that assessed me like I was a problem to be solved. My mother says you're investigating my father's signature, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. You think he's alive? I think something is wrong, I said carefully. I'm trying to understand what. Marcus smiled without humor. You want to know if I killed him? Or if I'm faking his signature to steal the company? That's what you're really asking. Did you? No. He sipped his coffee, utterly calm. But I understand why you'd wonder. My father and I had significant disagreements. He was brilliant at building an empire, but he was a dinosaur about how to run it. He refused to evolve. He treated the company like a kingdom and everyone else like subjects, including me. He cut you from his will. He did, 3 months before he died. Told me I was a disappointment, that I didn't understand real business, that I'd destroy everything he built with my naive tech fantasies. Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. So yes, I had motive, but I didn't kill him, and I'm not forging his signature. Could you forge it technically? He considered. The blockchain signature system Harrow Diamond uses. I helped design it 4 years ago. So, yes, theoretically I could break it. But I'd need his biometric data, current retinal scan, current fingerprints, access to his private cryptographic keys. All of that was destroyed when he died. Supposedly. Supposedly? Marcus leaned forward. Dr. Reeve, let me tell you something about my father. He was paranoid. Genuinely. Clinically paranoid in his last years. He believed people were trying to steal from him, betray him, destroy him. He trusted no one. Not Julian, not me, not even my mother entirely. So ask yourself, would a man like that, with that much wealth and power, not have contingency plans, backup systems, ways to maintain control even from beyond the grave? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Marcus said quietly, that maybe my father isn't dead. Or maybe he is dead, but he set up systems to continue operating after his death. Automated contracts, AI-driven decision trees, pre-programmed signatures triggered by specific conditions. With enough preparation and paranoia, you could ghost-run a company for months after dying. The idea was insane. It was also disturbingly plausible. Why would he do that? I asked. Control. Marcus stood up, preparing to leave. My father's entire life was about control. Maybe death was just one more thing he refused to surrender to. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid in my apartment staring at the ceiling, running through everything I knew. The body had been Elias Harrow, I was certain of that. The DNA, the dental records, the skeletal markers, everything matched. I hadn't made a mistake, but the signature was also genuine. Multiple verification systems confirmed it. Blockchain certification didn't lie. 2 impossible truths existing simultaneously. Unless. I sat up, my heart pounding. There was one possibility I hadn't considered. One explanation that fit both impossible truths. The next morning, I called Cassandra. I need to exhume the body. Silence on the line, then. He was cremated. I know. But before cremation, the body was held at a private mortuary facility for 3 days. Mortuaries keep detailed records, photographs, sometimes tissue samples for insurance purposes. If I can access those records, I might be able to verify something. Verify what? Whether the body I identified was actually cremated, or if it was switched before the cremation took place. Another silence, longer this time. You think someone substituted a different body? I think it's possible. The identification was solid. I'd stake my career on it. But between my identification and the cremation, there was a 3-day window. Private facility. Harrow family security controlling access. If someone wanted to make Elias Harrow disappear while making it look like he died, that would be the moment to do it. Who? Cassandra's voice was strained. Who would do that? Someone who benefited from his death but needed him alive. Someone with the resources and access to pull it off. Someone who understood both the technical systems and the family dynamics. Julian, she whispered. Maybe. Or someone else close to the family. Someone who could move money, forge signatures, orchestrate an elaborate disappearance. Someone who knew Elias well enough to predict his paranoia and use it. I spent the next week buried in investigation. The mortuary records showed the body had been under constant security. Harrow family guards, private facility. No outside access. But security logs showed a 4-hour gap on the second night. Power outage, the records claimed. Backup generators kicked in, but the security cameras were offline for exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. During that window, anything could have happened. I interviewed the mortuary director, a nervous man in his 60s who clearly didn't want to talk. The Harrow family insisted on maximum privacy, he said. We followed their instructions exactly. The body remained sealed until cremation. Did you personally verify the body before cremation? He hesitated. The family requested a closed process. We honored that. So you didn't see the body before it went into the crematorium? Dr. Reeve, I'm not comfortable with these questions. The family paid for privacy and I provided it. Whatever you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything, I lied. I'm just trying to understand the process. But I was suggesting something. I was suggesting that somewhere in that 3-day window, Elias Harrow's body had been removed and replaced with another corpse. Perhaps the helicopter pilot, Stefan Kovac, whose body had been recovered from the crash site. Similar height, similar build, burned beyond immediate visual recognition. The DNA and dental records I'd compared were Elias's, but what if the body that was cremated wasn't? The perfect crime. Fake your death with a real body. Let a forensic expert confirm your identity, then swap the corpse before cremation, and walk away with everyone believing you're dead. With enough money and planning, it was possible. But why? Why fake your death when you controlled a billion-dollar empire? The answer came when I finally got access to the offshore account movements. Following the money through layers of shell corporations and cryptocurrency exchanges, I found the destination, a massive land purchase in Botswana. 300 square kilometers of remote territory, purchased through intermediary companies 2 months before Elias's death. Botswana, one of the world's richest diamond-producing regions. I called Marcus. Your father bought land in Botswana. 300 square kilometers. Did you know about this? No. I heard keyboard clicks. He was searching. That's significant. That's potential diamond field territory. If he found a new deposit, if he wanted to develop it outside corporate channels, he'd need to disappear, I finished. He'd need everyone to think he was dead so he could develop the field privately. Outside regulatory oversight, outside corporate obligations. Jesus, Marcus breathed. He'd be free, completely free. No board, no partners, no family obligations. Just him and a diamond field worth billions, maybe tens of billions. It fit. It explained everything, the crash, the signature, the offshore money, the timing. Elias Harrow hadn't died. He'd escaped. He'd orchestrated the most elaborate disappearance in history, and I'd helped him do it by confirming his death. I was part of his plan. My reputation, my certainty, my signature on that death certificate, all tools in his escape. The rage I felt was incandescent. I'd been used, manipulated, made complicit in a fraud that would echo through legal and financial systems for decades. I contacted Cassandra with my findings. She listened in silence, then said quietly, "What do? We expose him. We prove he's alive. We bring him back to face what he's done." How? The contract signature. If he's alive in Botswana, if he's operating from there, then the digital signature had to be transmitted from a specific location. The blockchain certification includes metadata, IP addresses, server locations, transmission paths. If I can access that data, I can trace where the signature originated. It took 3 days of pushing, threatening, calling in favors, and leveraging Cassandra's resources. Finally, I got the blockchain metadata from the Swiss security firm that had verified the signature. The digital signature had originated from a server cluster in Gaborone, Botswana, transmitted through multiple encrypted channels, routed through privacy networks, but ultimately traceable to a single source location, the same region where the land had been purchased. I stared at the data on my screen, certainty and horror mixing in equal measure. Elias Harrow was alive. He'd faked his death, used his pilot's body as a substitute, manipulated the investigation, and escaped to build a new empire in secret. And I couldn't prove any of it. The body was cremated. The crash site was cleared. The investigation was closed. I had theories, circumstantial evidence, suspicious coincidences, but nothing that would stand up in court. Nothing that would convince authorities to pursue a billionaire who was legally dead. Elias Harrow had won. He'd achieved the perfect escape. Unless. I called Marcus one final time. "The signature system you helped design, could you track it? Could you trace active signatures back to their source in real time?" If I had access to the corporate network, yes, but I'm locked out. My father made sure of that before he died. "What if your mother gave you access?" A long pause. "That would work, but Dr. Reeve, if we expose him, if we prove he's alive, the legal chaos will be catastrophic. Insurance fraud, securities fraud, tax evasion, dozens of other charges. The company will be destroyed. My mother will lose everything. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about it, about justice versus destruction, about truth versus stability, about my role in all of this. Had I been a victim or an accomplice? "I'm prepared to know the truth," I said finally. "What happens after that? We'll decide together." Now I sit in my apartment looking at the evidence spread across my desk, the death certificate with my signature, the contract with Elias's signature, the blockchain data showing a living man operating from beyond the grave, the offshore accounts, the land purchase, the suspicious gaps in security footage. I have enough to ask questions, not enough to prove answers. Cassandra has agreed to give Marcus access to the corporate network. Tomorrow, we'll attempt to trace the next signature in real time, to pinpoint exactly where Elias Harrow is hiding. If we succeed, we'll have proof. If we fail, this all remains a theory, a ghost story about a billionaire who might or might not have escaped death. Part of me wonders if I should let it go, if I should accept that some mysteries are meant to stay unsolved, if I should acknowledge that Elias Harrow, in his own twisted way, achieved something remarkable. He became the only person to successfully die and live simultaneously. But I can't. Because my signature is on that death certificate. My reputation is attached to that identification. And I need to know if I was fooled by the greatest con artist of our generation, or if I'm chasing phantoms created by grief and paranoia. Tomorrow, I'll have my answer. Tomorrow, I'll know if the dead can sign contracts. And if they can, I'll know whether I should fear the living or the ghosts they leave behind. So I ask you, if you had the power, the money, the means to disappear completely, to shed your old life like a snake sheds its skin and start fresh with no obligations, no history, no one to answer to, would you do it? Would you fake your death and leave everyone you claim to love believing you were gone? Is freedom worth that price? Or is that the ultimate act of cowardice disguised as liberation? Think about it, because somewhere right now, Elias Harrow might be reading this, might be watching to see if the truth comes close to exposing him, might be deciding whether to disappear even deeper, or whether to emerge and claim the empire he never really left. And I'll be waiting to see which choice he makes. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like for more stories of crimes, secrets of powerful families, and investigations that no one dares to tell. Until the next case.